Hello and welcome back to Paddock and Track, the show where we bring you news on and off the track. I'm Max, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Amaan.
What's up, guys?
And today we're going to cover some news in the F1 world. So we're going to start out with the McLaren livery reveal, the surprise McLaren livery reveal, as well as their strange deletion of all of their Instagram posts. Then we'll move on to AlphaTauri's new deleting their Instagram. It seems to be a common topic among these teams. And maybe discuss what their new name might be. Then we'll move on to some of our predictions for the new season. And then we'll end it off with a little news about Guenther's leaving of Haas. Alright, so recently, in case you haven't noticed, McLaren went through their Formula 1 Instagram at least and archived all of their posts. It's very strange, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, they released their new livery. It looks okay. I think if you look up a picture, you might notice, if you remember from last season in Singapore, their stealth mode livery, it reminds me of that a lot, with the more black, but they finally got rid of the blue that they've had for so many years, which was just not a good look on that car. There's a lot more papaya, though, which is definitely a good thing to see. I think it's a good change, but I don't know if it's gonna be as good as I originally thought when I first saw it, just because it's not that big of a change.
I mean, yeah, the livery, I saw it last year and compared it to this year's car, and at first, like Max, I thought it was a cool livery, and when I saw that they had used this more similar colors and the color scheme on how they did it to last year's, and I think that it's not really much of a big change, but I still like how they put the chrome logo on the wheels and how they put basically that.
I think it would be a nice change too to see more of that chrome livery, like we saw at Silverstone last year. It was a really nice looking livery, and I like that it paid homage to the older cars of McLaren's victorious years, more so at least. But I really like that. They did the chrome numbers, which is a nice touch, but I think they could have done more with that chrome. Yeah, I just really, it's a change, but is it big enough of a change? Because the other thing it reminds me of is their Jack Daniels livery that they had for Las Vegas. It really just looks like a special livery from last year. And part of that might be because it's still on the old car. They have not shown us any pictures, of course, yet with the new car, because they don't want to spoil it, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But, I'm just not sure if it's a big enough change for them.
Well, now that we talked about the livery, I mean, I don't know what McLaren has in plan after archiving all their posts on Instagram.
I think really they've made a statement, I think. And if they want to continue the statement, their car has to be good.
Yeah.
If it's not a good car this year, they've kind of taken what they've tried to do and it's just fallen off for them.
Well, I think they have big plans in store, which I think it will come through when we talk about our predictions. Which is later in the episode.
I wonder too, though, if this has to do with any of the trouble they had with recent, with Bianca Bustamante, I believe is her last name. She's kind of been a PR nightmare for McLaren. If you don't know, she liked a post that was slandering Lance Stroll. Oof. It's not a good look for McLaren, who had just signed a new driver for their F1 Academy. So I wonder if them deleting their post is kind of giving them a fresh start, but at the same time it kind of gets rid of the history that they had before, which is not, of course, a lot on Instagram, since it's of course still somewhat newer of a platform. But still those old pictures, when you have Lando and Sainz together, there's nice pictures, and the fact that they're gone is a little strange,
Well, I completely agree. I think McLaren, over the past year and before the first half of their season especially, how they improved onto the second one. So I think that they're trying to portray that they're actually become way better and transcend what they did last year. And I think that's huge for them, because they can actually try and catch Red Bull.
But the problem for them is, what if they start out again like last year? They
Yeah.
start out in terrible form. Yeah, they got better throughout the season, but they need to start good and then stay good. They need to be like the combination of themselves and Aston Martin, right? Aston Martin
Yes,
really started.
they started really good.
Yeah, and then they kind of fell off towards the end of the season because they just couldn't develop as fast as everyone else. But so I think McLaren can take the fact that they have a very well made facility to develop these kind of things. They need to take that and combine it with a lot of their initial research, and figure out what works and what doesn't work. And they probably have a pretty good idea of that now from last year. But I think they just need to really do that and then just focus on development a lot for the rest of the season to push their car as far as they can go.
Well, also, we need to figure out, we need to see how their close competition with Ferrari and Mercedes, how they do too. Like, they could also become way better than they were last year too, and it could end up with the same standings.
Yeah, I agree. I think especially Mercedes has a lot of room to improve, and I think they're definitely going to try and show that they can improve. Ferrari is a little bit up in the air because the past couple of years they just haven't been where they should be. So it's a little hard to say with them on their improvement side. I think it'll be somewhat good. Like, they will be a competitive team, but I don't know if they'll be competing for wins.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that we should probably get to is AlphaTauri's Instagram while we're on the topic.
Yeah.
AlphaTauri recently deleted their entire Instagram, the F1 page. Of course, they still have AlphaTauri, the clothing brand, still has an Instagram page, but AlphaTauri, the F1 page, is completely gone off the face of the earth. Probably this is because of their new rebrand. I've heard basically they were selling the team off to the highest bidder. It'll still be a Red Bull team, essentially the Red Bull Junior team. But I've heard the main people in the bidding war I've heard Adidas and Hugo Boss have been in there, but more recently, like, Visa and Cash App have been trying to play their card. I don't know how that will pan out. What will end up happening with AlphaTauri? They definitely need something new, because last season it was fine, and Yuki, I think, showed a lot of great driving. But the problem with AlphaTauri is they're just not a competitive team.
Yeah, they don't have the aspects to get themselves as competitive.
Yeah.
Sure, they have great drivers in Tsunoda and a decent one in Ricardo.
Yeah.
But I feel like this name change is the only big news that probably happened with AlphaTauri, and I really don't think it will actually affect them.
Yeah, because if really they're just trying to get PR, but I don't think it'll really help them as much as they're hoping it will. Just kind of stir up drama for now.
Yeah.
And two, if AlphaTauri doesn't do well this season, I honestly feel like it might be time for Red Bull to scrap it. I don't know exactly how much money they're making off of it, and I'm sure when they had the AlphaTauri sponsorship, they were making a ton of money. But I just feel like AlphaTauri and Toro Rosso before, is just not a team that makes sense to be in F1, really.
Yeah.
As a junior team, it just seems like maybe that could be something like an F2 team, right? That sort of leads, if Red Bull, right now Red Bull has their racing school sort of in F2, and I think that really they could just change that to be AlphaTauri and then just get rid of the team, which would also be nice because it brings in Andretti. I don't know if you've heard this news. So Andretti, of course, an American company.
Yep.
And they've been very, very successful in IndyCar and other kinds of racing. Of course, Mario Andretti was a Formula One racer himself, a very good one at that. But they've been trying, I think, with Cadillac now. They've been trying to get into F1, and the teams are kind of against it. I mean, it's because really it wouldn't affect them that much. I think they just don't want another team with them for the competition.
I mean, yeah, I guess less competition is better.
Yeah, and of course, because they don't know how they're going to be able to do, right? They don't know what Andretti is going to be like if they ever even get into it, into F1. They don't know what they're going to be like and how good they're going to be. So I think the teams are maybe kind of scared of what could happen in that case.
Well, isn't there another team also coming in 2026?
Yeah, well, of course, Audi, yeah. But of course, I think that's a little different scenario for them. It makes it a little easier because they're just taking the place essentially of, what is now Stake F1 team. Which, I don't know about that rebrand.
I don't know about that rebrand either.
But I think the problem with F1 is like in like 10, 15 years ago, you'd see like random teams just pop up for like a year or two, and then they would go away.
Yeah.
And now I feel like it's gotten to a point where everybody is so like locked in as like this is how it has to be, that all of the teams are just so reluctant to change.
Which I think also reflects the drivers too.
Yeah.
Like we saw last year, or well this year, the grid is almost exactly the same as the end of last season.
Yeah.
Which I don't think has happened like that much.
Yeah, it's
right?
not very common. You know, the silly season, as they say, it really didn't happen this year. They just would never, which is it's strange because, you know, you would think that you would have a lot of driver change, right? There's, you know, drivers come in and out, and the ones that are good, of course, stay, right?
Mm-hmm.
But those that are not so good, you know, I think you just got to get rid of them. And really, that's the thing we just didn't see this season, you know. Logan Sargent, we may love him as Americans, but is he really the best choice for Williams?
Yeah, I mean, if Williams is looking to become more competitive, which, as we know right now, they aren't, I think it's time to axe Sargent.
Yeah.
Well, I think Albon, he shows a lot of shows a lot of promise. He's amazing. He's an amazing driver. I feel like he could help Williams become way more competitive in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Albon's kind of their best hope at this point, because without him, they're kind of useless, right? You know, of course, Williams used to be such a good team, and then really, honestly, they just haven't been able to bounce back from their like harder times, I think, and that's really not helped them out in terms of like finding good drivers, because nobody wants to work with them, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the problem they face. With, of course, Albon's a great driver, but what if other people are going to see that and they're going to want him?
Exactly.
And then where does Williams go, right? Unless they can establish themselves as a competitive team this year, I don't think the future is looking too great for them.
Well, even if they don't show competitive, if they show like the potential to become competitive, like how McLaren did, like second half season. I mean, it doesn't have to be the full season, but if they actually show that their like upgrades and stuff can work. I think Williams, it could work out if that actually happens. If not, I don't think it's looking too great.
Yeah. Do you want to move on now to our predictions for next year's season?
Let's do that.
All right. So just to remind you, the standings for last year were pretty unsurprising. Honestly, I think most people would say. So for constructors, we have Red Bull, then Mercedes, then Ferrari, then McLaren, then Aston Martin, Alpine is 6th, then Williams, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, and Haas.
Well, just also to point that out, that Mercedes and Ferrari had to fight for 2 and 3, so we put that also into consideration how they will do this season as well.
Yeah, because they were very close in points. It really all came down to Abu Dhabi, and then just didn't work out exactly as they had hoped for Ferrari, mostly because of Sainz was not doing that great in that race. Leclerc did everything he could, and it didn't work out for them in the end.
Yeah.
Then we turn to the driver standings. So Max Verstappen, as kind of all of us expected, I think he dominated with an almost 300-point lead over second place.
Which is his teammate.
Yeah. His teammate Sergio Perez right behind him. Then Hamilton in the Mercedes. And then Alonso in the Aston Martin, which was kind of more surprise for us this year. You know, we definitely did not expect to see that happen.
Well, I think mostly that is because of the first half of the season. I mean, he's a phenomenal driver.
Yeah.
And I think that first half also carried in points for him.
Yes, definitely. But of course, he tied for points with Charles Leclerc, but having more podiums, Alonso was placed 4th ahead of Leclerc in 5th. And then we see Norris coming in 6th, which was a great season.
1 point behind Alonso and Leclerc.
Just barely. If he had done that one more point, he would have been ahead of Leclerc in 5th place.
Wow.
But honestly, Norris has shown himself as a great driver, and it sucks for him that he can't get his first win. I think he just hasn't had the car to do that.
Yeah.
Which hopefully, I think we're both thinking this season maybe will be his year.
Probably get it, yeah.
Then in 7th was Carlos Sainz. And then behind him, George Russell, which was not probably the greatest season for Russell. Being that he is directly compared to Lewis Hamilton, who is of course in equal machinery, it's a little hard to compare them as Lewis Hamilton is a 7-time world champion. But you would think Russell would be able to do a little bit better in the Mercedes.
Well, even then, Mercedes really trying to fight for that.
Honestly,
title, dude.
I think Hamilton is probably close to retiring because at this point, I think his goal was to get to that 8th world championship to tie Michael Schumacher, and I just don't think that Mercedes is going to be able to do that anytime soon.
Yeah, Red Bull's just too good.
Yeah. And then 9th place was Oscar Piastri, which amazing rookie season for him.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the best rookies we've seen in a while since like Lewis Hamilton. And of course in the same team, McLaren. But a great season for Oscar Piastri and 2 podiums and 1 sprint race win.
Yeah,
like that's a great season.
I think he's like isn't best McLaren rookie since Lewis Hamilton. Yeah.
And then 10th place was Lance Stroll, which honestly he should have been able to place so much higher.
Yeah.
I mean, seeing how well Alonso was able to do, like it just really shows how not great Stroll is.
I think it's probably the car first half that probably got his points, but
Then we move to 11th, so that's Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon following right behind him in the Alpines.
Yep.
Both with a podium between them. Pierre Gasly had kind of 2. One was in a sprint race.
Yeah.
But a okay season for Alpine. There was talk the owner of Alpine was thinking of removing themselves from F1 because they were saying that they just were not competitive enough. And then that was right before Gasly got his podium at Zandvoort in the Netherlands. But honestly, just a very mediocre year for Alpine, I think.
Yeah.
And then 13th, right behind them, was Alex Albon in the Williams. Kind of a surprise there, seeing as Williams, again, as we said, is just not a competitive team anymore. But Alex Albon's just an amazing driver, I think.
Yeah, I mean, as we said before, he definitely has the potential to carry Williams to a higher spot in the years to come if Williams elects to actually become like competitive with a better car.
And then behind him in 14th place is Yuki Tsunoda. Again, I think another really good driver in a car that's kind of holding him back.
Yeah.
I think we saw Yuki become a much more mature driver over the season and a much more developed driver.
Yes.
In the first half of the season, I think he had 2 points.
Yeah.
Going into the second half, it wasn't looking great for AlphaTauri, and Yuki really turned it around. I mean, of course, Lawson and Ricciardo helped him out a bit, but really, I think Yuki was the driving factor behind AlphaTauri's success this year.
Yeah, I mean, with AlphaTauri being not the most competitive team, Tsunoda will drive his heart out, but I think it won't be enough to actually catapult him to like top 10 drivers. I think he'll still stay middle of the pack.
Yeah. Behind him in 15th place, Valtteri Bottas. An okay finish for him, especially in that Alfa Romeo. It's a little challenging on him. He came from Mercedes, of course, before, where he was a pretty good driver. Not some might say he wasn't he wasn't necessarily as good as Hamilton was, but he was a good driver. So I think that coming down to Alfa Romeo has just I think this is kind of where he is probably gonna end up retiring. He's getting older now, so I think Alfa Romeo is kind of the spot for him to finish up his career. But still not a horrible finish in a not so great car.
I mean, we can see if he can make a little bit of a spark for Stake.
Yeah.
And
so behind him in 16th place was Nico Hülkenberg for Haas. This was not Haas's season. Really not any season has been Haas's season so far. But, we'll get into that probably more when we talk about Guenther's leaving the team. But really just not a good season for Haas.
No.
Behind him, 17th place was Daniel Ricciardo. Of course, difficult for him coming in at the last couple of races of the season. He still scored a decent 6 points.
Not only that, he also broke his wrist in the middle when he crashed. Wait, where was it again?
Zandvoort,
it was Zandvoort.
in Netherlands.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that was where we saw Lawson come in, but Ricciardo, I mean, it was a rocky. I mean, we didn't see enough of him to see if he has what it takes to actually get AlphaTauri a
Yeah,
little bit higher in the
definitely.
standings.
Behind him in 18th place is Joe Guan Yu. Joe Guan Yu, he had a pretty good rookie season, and I just think he has not been able to replicate that success. Scoring 6 points, he tied with Ricardo, but really just kind of not a great season for Joe Guan Yu, showing that he's kind of just a middle of the pack driver, and that Alfa Romeo is just not a competitive team at this point. Then we see Kevin Magnussen in the Haas. Kevin Magnussen I think he's at the end of his time in racing. He's not really been a great driver. He's okay, but he's not really like good, I would say.
And seeing that Haas really didn't have a great car, it doesn't really not a good look on him.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
20th was Liam Lawson, the man who competed in very few races, I think like 3 or 4, while Ricardo was out with his wrist injury. But a very good job by him. In my opinion, I think AlphaTauri should have taken him over Ricardo. Get some new talent in there. He showed great promise during his short drive with AlphaTauri. I think he would have been a very valuable asset had they kept him.
Well, I think that he definitely has another chance to get on an F1 team.
Yes.
And especially if we see like drivers such as like Sargent or like anyone like go out. But I think that Lawson definitely has a bigger chance of getting to F1. And also competing with Ricardo, I know he probably is better for the future talent of this, but as we've seen, Ricardo is really good at PR.
Yes.
And that I think it's elevating AlphaTauri to become like more relevant.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's why they kept him over Lawson.
Finishing 21st in a 20-driver grid was Logan Sargent. He scored a point at least it was in the U.S. at Austin, but honestly, just not the best first season that Sargent would have wished for, especially seeing that the success that Albon was able to have. Now, granted, it wasn't a lot of success, especially being in that Williams, but still much more than Sargent was. I think that's not a great look for him, and he was very lucky that Williams wanted to keep him around.
Well, I mean, we saw Vowell that he said that Logan. I mean, he was like proud of how Logan did this season, which I don't know if that's completely true, but I guess we'll see how he does this season and if he actually stays in that Williams car.
I think he has become a more mature driver since the start of the season, but I think it'll take a lot for him to keep driving next year. Then, of course, finishing 22nd was Nick DeVries, which was honestly strange for him, a Formula E champion, Formula 2 champion, really just not a great driver in F1.
Yeah. As you saw, 0 points, zero anything. He didn't really make anything happen. Well, granted, AlphaTauri doesn't have the greatest car, but just still disappointing.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so now we'll move on to our predictions.
Yes.
So we'll start with constructors, I think. So for me, we'll go highest to lowest. So I think we can both agree Red Bull in first.
Completely.
Definitely is going to happen. Red Bull has been so dominant. They've already said that they have started focusing on their car for 2025.
I think that's a complete heartbreaker for other teams because they're so confident that they're just going to win this one.
Yeah. And then, so for me, I have Ferrari in second place. I think Ferrari can make a big enough comeback, and I think that other teams won't be able to. So I think that should help them out a bit. And then third is McLaren. McLaren, I think, is a good team, and I think if their gamble pays off, I think they will be able to do pretty well. Behind them, I have Mercedes. Mercedes is, I think, just not doing enough on the development side to stay competitive with the front of the pack. Behind Mercedes, I have Alpine. I know some people think Aston Martin will do better this year. I honestly just don't think that they're going to be able to replicate the season that they had last year. So I flipped around the order from Alpine and Aston Martin. So Alpine in 5th, Aston Martin in 6th. I just don't think Aston Martin will be able to do as well as they did this year. Then behind them, Williams. I think Williams will have a decent season, end up about where they were last year. Yeah, just kind of a middle of the pack season for them. Behind them, Stake, F1 team, formerly the Alfa Romeo team. I think Stake has the ability to surprise us, and as starting kind of fresh for the most part. But I don't think it'll be a great season, but in middle of the back markers. Then in ninth place, AlphaTauri. I don't think they have the capacity to do well and be competitive this season. Especially seeing how they did last season, it's possible they could surprise us. Really, they're probably going to be taking their car from the RB20, the RB19, which was, of course, the 2023 Red Bull car. They could essentially just take that car, but I don't know if the development will be enough that they'll be able to keep up with everyone else. And then in last place, good old Haas. I just don't think they're the team that no one wants to be. I feel bad for them, but I just don't think Haas is gonna be able to do much better.
Well, all right. Well, let's. Read off my constructors' predictions now. Well, we agreed that Red Bull was gonna be in first with their complete dominance. I mean, yeah, we've seen before that they definitely will just blow out the competition, but we can see who in second could probably catch them. Which Max said Ferrari, but I said McLaren. See now, I think McLaren they have a mission. They definitely do. We have promising driver in Piastri. Definitely, he's gonna become really, really good. And his rookie season was just phenomenal. Like 97 points, and he definitely for a year or two, he can definitely elevate McLaren along with Lando, who is also trying to get his first win, which I think he definitely will.
I think he can.
So I think with those factors combined, and that McLaren also, they deleted their Instagram, like as if they're trying to get a fresh start.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that McLaren, I think they can get they can get P2 in the constructors. At third, I'm gonna have to put Ferrari. I mean, they definitely have as we saw before, they finished top 5 in. I think was it top? Yeah, they were fourth, weren't they?
Third place.
Third place? Yeah,
yes.
Third place. No, they weren't. It was Mercedes was third.
No.
Oh no, Mercedes was second.
Yeah, they were third place.
They were third. Okay, so Ferrari, they have great drivers: Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, and we saw last year that Sainz got one win, the only win that the Red Bulls didn't get.
That was not Max Verstappen either. And well, there was a couple Sergio Perez's in there.
But non-Red Bull win, which I think that's a great look for Sainz to definitely replicate this year.
And then, by the way, I just want to say really quick while we're on the topic of Carlos Sainz, his dad just won the Dakar Rally at 61.
Wow.
Which is amazing. It's an amazing feat for anyone to win the Dakar Rally, and at 61, that's crazy. It's like a 15-day, I believe, rally across the desert. It's pretty gruesome. Grueling. Yeah, grueling. That's what I'm saying. It's a lot, and at 61 to win that is amazing. But anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, when I was saying about Ferrari, I mean they also had more internal issues than not. Questionable calls by the engineers. Also, their pit stop time sometimes not great. But they still boast some of the best pit stops in F1 last season.
Yeah,
but I think that if they do get their act together internally, they can definitely be really good.
Yeah.
All right, at 4 I have Mercedes. Yes, Hamilton is getting older. I think his time is coming to an end, whether it's like a year or two from now. I just think that Mercedes will not catch Red Bull. I think their time is done.
Yeah.
But I do still see them competing though, like still trying to fight till the bitter end, but it's just not gonna work.
Mm-mm.
At 5, I know Max had Alpine, but I had Aston. I was gonna go with the safe decision here, because yes, Aston worked on their car. They worked on their car last year in the beginning half of the season, and I think that they could definitely. I mean, they can. I don't think they're gonna prove that much, but
I know Fernando Alonso is a phenomenal driver. He definitely will bring Aston to where where they can be competitive,
Yeah.
but not like to the top.
Yeah.
But I can also see Lance Stroll maybe picking up the slack a little bit.
He needs to. He needs.
He
to
really
get his act
does.
together.
He really does. But I don't think he will. Though.
Yeah.
Number 6, I do have Alpine. Pierre Gasly, really good driver. I mean, I think he definitely will improve,
I think so.
and he definitely will carry that Alpine team to 6th place with alongside Ocon, which I don't have the greatest hopes for, but you know, he's a decent enough driver to get them where they are, and I think he's just a good like co-driver alongside Gasly, but we can see if that changes in the future too.
Yeah.
Number 7, we have Williams. I mean, we only got Albon basically
it's
in
hard
that
to-
Williams car. I mean, if Sargent has like some phenomenal comeback, that would be like the story of the year.
Yeah.
But I just don't see Williams being that great. But I also see Albon being, I think, better than last season,
Yeah.
which I think that's why the Williams will be 7th instead of like lower. Wait,
Okay.
what were they? They were like 8th last
I
year.
believe they were 7th.
7th.
believe
So I think they will just stay the same, but just Albon being,
Yeah.
just being who he is. Let's see. At 8, I have AlphaTauri actually. So I know that they don't have much expectations, but I do see them using Red Bull's car from last year, which was the RB19. They definitely will. I don't know how to say it. I mean, I think that Tsunoda will have I think he'll have a great season, but it's just in that AlphaTauri relevance will not be there, and I don't think that's gonna really propel them anywhere.
Yeah.
Number 9, I have Stake,
Okay.
formerly Alfa Romeo. I mean, I put them there because I think because Haas is worse. Because I'll just say it, because Haas, they fired Guenther.
Yeah.
Well, not fired
They
officially,
technically
but
did.
they technically did fire it. I mean, I don't really have. I think they're interchangeable at the bottom.
Yeah.
But I mean, Stake could definitely they could definitely surprise people. New branding, like there could be like a new team, but I don't know. I don't really have much hope for these teams at the bottom. But yeah, that's my constructors' predictions.
All right. Well, let's move on now to drivers.
All right.
Once again, we're starting from highest going to lowest. So I think we can both agree Verstappen. On top.
Yeah.
There's no. He's a generational talent.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of like the next Lewis Hamilton or Michael Schumacher. He's an amazing driver. And honestly, I don't think much will hold him back.
Yeah.
And then Perez, I think the RB20 will just be a good enough car.
Yeah.
I think, the Red Bull's very, very confident in their car. I think it's going to be as good, if not better, than the last year's car.
Yeah.
In third, I think Leclerc will be able to pull off something that will make all of those depressed Ferrari fans out there happy. He's a good driver. If Ferrari gives him a good enough car, I think he could pull off P3. Behind him, Hamilton. Hamilton is just we've seen before. He's a great driver. I just don't think Mercedes has the power, the capability to lift him into anything higher than 4th place. Behind him, I have Lando Norris. Norris is a great driver. I think we just haven't seen him as good as he can be. McLaren has not been able to give him a good car, and that has really affected him, of course. And I just think that the car that they're going to give him next year, it might be good, but I don't think it's good enough to be top 3. Behind him, Sainz, again, if Ferrari can give both of their drivers a good car, they'll be able to do well in the season. They have great drivers with them. They just need to give them a good car. Behind him, Russell, he can be a good driver, I think, but once again, it's the same thing as Hamilton. They just don't have a good enough car to bring them up any higher. Then Piastri, I think Piastri, as you said, as we both said, he's a great driver. I think in his rookie season, he showed a lot of promise for next year. If McLaren's car is as good as they're kind of hyping it up to be, I think he'll be able to do pretty well. Behind him, Alonso. Alonso he's a great driver. I mean, he's a 2-time world champion, but I just think that Aston's car is not going to be as good as it was last year. Then Gasly, he's a good middle of the pack driver, right? I don't think, as much as I like Gasly, I don't think he's the driver to make it much higher, right? I just think he's kind of a middle of the pack person. Behind him, Albon. Honestly, Albon is a great driver. If Williams can give him a somewhat competitive car, even if that's like middle of the pack, like a P10, like a consistent P10 car, I think Albon will do okay. He's a great driver. I think he can do this. And then behind him is Ocon. Ocon is just, he's not consistent enough. Sometimes he's like weirdly good. Like Monaco last year, he finished P3, which was great for him. But of course, it's a little hard to say in Monaco because it's so hard to pass. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I just don't think he's that great of a driver. It's hard to say. But I guess we'll see. Behind him is Lance Stroll. If Aston Martin's car is like somewhat okay, he can finish in like the midfield. I think he's just not a great driver. He needs like, I think he just needs to be a better driver, and he just can't. Like, that's something you can't teach. You just have to, you just kind of have to be a good driver, and I just don't think he has that capability. Behind him, I have Yuki Tsunoda. The AlphaTauri car it's not going to be a great car. I think we already can probably say that. It's possible they'll surprise us, but I don't think there'll be much surprise. So, Tsunoda's a good driver, so I think he can do okay, but not anything crazy. Behind him is Bottas. Again, like a seasoned veteran, but I don't think he has the car to help him to get very high. Behind him I have Ricciardo. I know a lot of people really like Ricciardo. I just think that at this point, he's not there. Yeah. Yuki kind of, I think in that end of the season where he had the time, I think Yuki kind of outperformed him. And I think it goes to show, A, how good of a driver Yuki is, but also B, that I just don't think Ricciardo's got it in him anymore to be a great driver. Mm-hmm. Behind him is Hülkenberg. It's just Haas being Haas. There's not much to say there. And then Zhou Guanyu. He's not a bad driver. It's just that I don't think the stake car is going to be any good, really. Behind him is Magnussen. Magnussen just, as I said before, I just don't think he's a great driver anymore. He wasn't really anyways to start, and I just don't think he's gotten any better. And then last place, I hate to say it, but I think Logan Sargent's going to end up being last.
Like, painful.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, but like honestly, when you only score 1 point in your rookie season, the hopes are not high for your second season. So that rounds off my list.
Well, my driver's predictions, I mean, I know I am very new to the sport, so my predictions are probably not going to be the greatest, but I know a little bit, and I think that like I can like build off some things Max says, but there's also some surprises, and I believe in more surprises than I think Max does. Well, he's more realistic. I think that to make it more interesting, there's going to be more surprise in it. So here's mine. So yes, we know Verstappen is going to be first. I mean, he is going to go down as one of the all-time great drivers in F1 history. Like he's just generational. It's too good.
Yeah.
I mean, the hate is unwarranted. I don't know why people hate him so much. They just hate that he's just too good.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think that Red Bull car will definitely carry Perez to P2. I know I'm not going to discredit him. He's a good driver. He's a good driver, but he is very overshadowed by Verstappen, which is why he's a scapegoat in this situation if things do go wrong with him.
Yeah.
So in P3, I do have Leclerc. I think he, like you said, he definitely will like be really good for Ferrari if they do get their act together with their strategy and stuff. But this is like a big if they get their act together. Like he could definitely be lower. Definitely could be. Mm-hmm. Same with like Sainz, he could be definitely lower as well. And P4, I have Hamilton. He is getting older. Like I said before, that Mercedes car isn't gonna be good competitive like to carry them to a championship, but he is definitely like one of the greatest drivers of all time. He's definitely still like good enough to like be competitive, and I think he could very well like pass Leclerc and like definitely finish P3 as well. In P5, I have Lando Norris. Okay, so in 5 and 6, I have both the McLaren. So like Norris and Piastri. Like I said, I'm trying to back up my P2 claim with McLaren because I think they definitely will very well surprise us. They will definitely will, and I think that McLaren is like ready for that, and that their car definitely is going to be an improvement from last year. But there could be the off chance that it doesn't work out and that McLaren could fall, and I very much could be wrong. So I mean, yeah.
No, I agree.
All right. So we'll just okay. So I have Alonso at 7. I mean, Alonso, great driver and all, but I feel like the competition's better. At 8, I have Sainz. Yeah, that also depends on if the Ferrari's great or not. I mean, if it's good, he'll be higher, but if it's not, he'll be lower. I have Russell at 9. That McLaren car, not McLaren. That Mercedes car is not that competitive. Yeah. I mean, it's not gonna be the greatest competitive, and he's a good driver and all, but he won't catch Hamilton.
No.
Yeah, at all. So P10 Gasly, as said before, middle of the pack driver. So I think that he would just stay as he is for Alpine, and they can be just middle of the pack as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Albon at 11, great driver. It's just that he's stuck in that Williams car. I mean, if they're competitive, they can definitely improve. Tsunoda, I have 12. That's a surprise, only because I think that he definitely could become better because he has become more mature. But definitely he will. I feel like he will definitely become better. But if that AlphaTauri is like really, really bad, he could just fall. Exactly. 13, I have Ocon. I mean, he's just behind Gasly, and Gasly is still a middle of the pack driver, so naturally he would be lower. But yeah, that's right about it. Stroll at 14th. I mean, he definitely needs to get his act together. Otherwise, that is just not gonna be a good look for him. He will definitely fall. But if he rises, that'd be a good sign for that Aston. Number 15, I have Ricardo. He's great at PR, but his driving has fallen off over these last few years. I mean, like I said, I thought Lawson was the better option for that AlphaTauri team for the future, but I mean, I guess it is what it is when they kept Ricardo.
Yeah.
At 16, I have Hulkenberg. I mean, like I said, I'm new to the sport. I really don't know much about his past, but I know that these last 5 drivers are not they're not gonna really do much. So then I have 17, I have Magnussen, 18, Bottas. Well, 18, 19, I have Bottas and Zoe, and number 20, I mean, I've got Logan.
Yeah.
Sad to say it, but as an American, it's sad. I mean, he definitely could improve a lot, but if he doesn't, I don't think he will be in that seat for long.
Especially being compared, of course, directly to Albon.
Yeah.
It's difficult for him.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up our predictions. Now I just want to touch real quick on Guenther's he's leaving of Haas. I think Guenther was doing the best with what he had. Gene Haas has not given him a lot of money, a lot of patience. I think that, to be fair, I guess he has given him a decent amount of patience. He's been there at Haas for a while now, but he just doesn't have the funding behind him to make a good racing team. That's the problem. I don't think that their new team principal is going to help them much. They just need funding. And that's something that Guenther's always worked for. It's hard to run a team successfully and have very little funding. You're scrambling for money. Your budget is really low, and when you don't have that money, it's hard to have a successful team, right?
Which is definitely why we definitely think both collectively agree that Haas will finish at the bottom, but only because that I don't think they'll find another team principal that will actually help them, and that Haas is not willing to spend the money to become competitive.
And with the passion that Guenther always had, he didn't care if they were low on the grid. That wasn't the important part. For him, it was just having raising this team up to be better. And he always had that passion. He said in an interview, he was like, it's not about how you fall, it's about how you get back up, right? That's something that's a common saying, but I think he really actually believes in that, right? It's not just because he's trying to show through his example. I feel like you can see that it's not about the low points. It's about how you get back from those low points.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. I 100% agree.
I think this season was one of those low points for Haas.
Yeah.
And I think Gene Haas got to the point where he's like, I can't do this anymore, and Guenther's gone, right?
Yeah.
I think if Guenther had stayed, maybe they would be able to figure something out, but I just think that Haas is not a team that's going to do well in this sport.
Yeah, exactly. So if Gene Haas is not willing to spend the money to become competitor, I don't think they're gonna last in F1 for long.
No.
Which I think in the coming years, I think they'll have definitely try to pull out.
Yeah. Alright, well, that about does it for this episode of Paddock and Track. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to give us a follow, share us with your friends, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thanks for listening.